Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology in particular and how it affects your lives and the lives of people around the world. Excuse me, I have a little bit of an itchy face this morning. I haven't been doing anything wrong. It's just my face is itchy. So let's go. Let's get right to it. First of all, the advertisements. I will be on the Arsha Video Films relationship session doing two lectures on relationships, how to time them, how to see them in a chart, how to see whether or not they'll be happy or sad, or what the nature of the relationship will be. And that'll be on June 2nd. I'll be appearing on June 2nd to June 5th. The actual session itself lasts between June 1st and I believe June 8th. So you can go to the Arsha Vidya Curriculum website to check that out. We'll try to put a link in, um, not in this video, but close to this video, so you can see where how to get there. I'll also be appearing online on Saptarishi Astrology's Guru tribute to C.S. Patel on July 7th or 8th. The day has not yet been um, determined. So I will be appearing in a presentation format, an actual teaching format. And I'm going to be working on my articulation like crazy between now and next uh, Thursday, I believe it is. And I will also be doing my vocal exercises to make sure that everyone understands me. And if it seems like I'm paying too much attention to this, I received feedback from people about this in several cases. So I'm very conscious of it. And I'm also conscious that I speak a little too softly and a little bit too, trying to think of the right word, too, um, I don't articulate well, if that makes sense to people out there. So it's not something that I intentionally do. I don't think anybody intentionally does that. It's just a part of who I am. And I can give you reasons from my chart, but I can't rest on that. So enough of the self-revelation. Also, you can contact me for readings pretty much at any time. You can call me at 508 525 0001, or you can also contact me through NEIVAS at Comcast.net. You can also find me on Facebook, YouTube, um, and you can contact me through those outlets: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Uh, in I'm trying to remember the last one. Oh God, that's horrible when your mind starts to go. But you can contact me on several social media channels. I'm on quite a few of them, not every one, but I'm on quite a few of them. So so if you'd like a reading, I do charge for readings. I do charge for lessons. And I can cover you. I can help you from whatever stage that you're starting from, or whatever topic you want to cover. I'm relatively knowledgeable about many branches of Jyotish. I don't know everything, but I know a bit. And if it's something I'm not comfortable teaching, I will tell you flat out. And I will refer you to somebody who's more of an expert in that area than I am. Okay, fair enough. So the major thing we're going to look at this week is we're going to look at changes in sign placements. We're going to look at what's going to happen over the next week. Please, the subscriptions have been going up in the channel, which I'm very gratified to report. But I do need more subscriptions. I will get to flashier backgrounds, I promise you. And it's just been a matter of finding times between setting up a house and a lot of other things. So let's see now. Let's go to the actual chart for this week, and we'll pull that up and look at that and see what's happening in the world, first of all. And I'm going to repeat this a couple of times, make sure we don't have black screens. All right, so hopefully that didn't. I stopped the recording and started it again. Hopefully that doesn't screw anything else up. And let's see now. And one more time for luck. I'm going to stop the share and go on one more time for luck because Zoom is temperamental. So I'm speaking to you. This is not the right chart. It's King Chucky's chart in England. So we're going to a new chart set in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is my hometown. Right now, I was actually born in Fall River, Massachusetts. For those of you who know anything about the Elizabeth Warden murders, that's what it's primarily famous for. That and being a place where George Stephanopoulos lived for a few years, and Morton Dean came from, who was a CBS, I believe, news broadcaster, and of course, my birthplace. Okay, so we're going to show this again. All right, so let's start this up again. All right. Oh, that was weird. Oh, I went to a horror chart. Let's change this. All right. So we're back to a horror chart. For those of you who don't know, a horror chart has to do with money or wealth. And there are several derivations of a horror chart. The one I just picked isn't my personal favorite, but it's it's interesting nonetheless to see which planets are in the horror chart, and which planets are showing signs of wealth, and which planets are showing signs of expenditure. Now, from this chart, we have the moon in the first house, which indicates a lot of focus on money and money situations. A lot of these charts have had focus on this, but this one's particularly interesting because the moon is in lunar mansion Purva Falguni, which is considered to be an extraordinarily wealthy and generous nakshatra. Okay, so nakshatras are 27 lunar mansions that surround the chart. Oh, by the way, while I'm mentioning this auspicious and generous lunar mansion, please like, subscribe, and comment. I will have a Patreon page relatively soon. When I say relatively soon, that could be months from now, but I will have a Patreon page. And we'll be doing we'll also be doing more discussions on remedial measures in charts over the next few months. So stay tuned for that. So the main thing over here to look at from this chart is we have a lot of focus on worry about wealth. Jupiter's aspecting the moon, and sun's in the 10th house. So most governments are showing some anxiety about money. I know that large parts of Europe are facing economic problems right now, energy problems in particular. Mars is in the 12th house in this chart, you can see right here. So Mars is always the planet connected with energy resources. And also from the chart, the moon is in the first house, so there will be some shifting or changing. But right now, governments around the world are stubborn. They don't want to change, and they'll be in that position really for another um, 29 days. I'm sorry, not 29 days, 19 days or so until the sun enters Gemini. Now, the reason for the stubbornness is mainly because the sun and the moon, as I'm giving this presentation, are both in fixed signs. This is Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. And these are all in fixed signs. We're heading towards a situation in which we're close to a Kalasarpa Yoga. Not quite. So Kalasarpa Yogas are where all the planets are either, or Kala Amrita Yogas are where all the planets are being eaten by Rahu or Ketu. Kalasarpa is when all the planets are heading into Rahu. Rahu's consuming everything. And Ketu, the south lunar node, which is responsible for eclipses of the sun and the moon. And Rahu, the north lunar node, is mainly responsible for eclipses of the moon, but sometimes the sun as well. And essentially, what happens during Kalasarpa is everybody feels kind of boxed in. So this is not quite a Kalasarpa yoga, but it does represent a kind of a, most of the planets are on this side of the zodiac. Okay, so they're in between Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo, and all the way down to Libra. And the only outlier is Saturn, the only planet which is not in the full within the Rahu Ketu control zone is Saturn. So this is not necessarily a good planet to have in outside of the control zone because Saturn essentially restricts things. And there's an aphorism: Saturn destroys what it looks at. Now, that's an exaggeration. A lot of Hindu axioms or a lot of Hindu or Vedic astrology axioms are exaggerations to make a point. But what's happening right now is Saturn is affecting politics around the world. It's affecting education. It's affecting communications around the world. It's trying to restrict education and communications. That's what Saturn's trying to do. It's trying to impose its own vision. One thing I think a lot of astrologers look at when they look at Saturn, they don't realize how I won't make a presumption about astrologers. Saturn can be a very restrictive and controlling planet. You'll see a lot of strong Saturns in the charts of dictators, people who have um, absolute control or rule. And Saturn's not aspecting the sun anymore, so the sun's moved out of that particular position where the government's not being directly attacked, but there is disappointment in leadership just because of Jupiter Mercury and Rahu combination. And this also indicates a lot of our leaders aren't talking with one another. And it's being sensationalized by the press to a greater extent than it probably should. In the United States, we have the debt crisis, and we actually have had two subsequent closures of the government by failing to meet a resolution of the debt crisis previously. The world didn't end. The financial markets weren't happy, but the world didn't end. Government workers are normally furloughed in events like this, but they always get their back pay. So this is something I'm not really feeling all that concerned about long term. I think they will make an agreement. They have until May 31st. They're saying early June to reach an agreement. I don't think they will, at least from the charts that I'm seeing right now, at least from this chart, I don't think they will. They could surprise me, but I don't think they will in the United States. And I think what you're going to see is it get resolved probably in early June, maybe around June 6th or 7th. That's my estimate. They could surprise me and come up with something earlier, but Jupiter aspecting Mercury is about another Mercury's about another 13 days in that sign. So really that's a couple of weeks from now. They'll do some resolution and the communications will be a little bit better. The other thing is there have been some communications problems from this combination. Mercury Rahu gives frustrated communications, and I think you're seeing that essentially all over the world. But you're in particular you're seeing that in the United States. There's a lot of controversy about communications occurring in the United States right now and also around the world because most governments aren't communicating well with their people. They're not telling them how they can take care of them. Um, the one thing I sort of fuddled about, this is being broadcast the day before the election in Turkey, was that I fuddled and I thought Erdogan would win if they went to a second round. And last week, because the polls were so overwhelmingly in favor of Mr. Kemal, I fudged a bit and said I thought that Mr. Kemal would win, but to me, it's still a toss up. But the advantage is definitely Erdogan's, and I think he'll be reelected president. I'm not taking a position on whether or not that's a good or a bad thing for Turkey, but is Turkey's in so in the United States, um, it's unusual for us to change leaders in the middle of a war or a warlike situation. Uh, so if the economy is in peril, you'll see a change in leadership. But Turkey's also in a warlike situation. So I think that favors with Syria and with the Kurds. So I think that favors the current president in Turkey. And at least from the chart, that's Saturn aspecting Jupiter Mercury. Um, there'll be a lot of distortion about what's happening in Turkey because of this combination. Um, I'm not defending Mr. President Erdogan. I'm just saying there's distortion coming out of what's happening in Turkey. The sun is fixed, so that doesn't bode well for incumbents being thrown out of office, at least right now. But there is disappointment. Um, the sun is so there is disappointment with incumbents, and again, as I said, this will be true really until the end of November 2023. You may see a shift, um, but that's true pretty much everywhere. England's showing signs of forming a Labour government, or the Labour government's more likely to take over next time around, um, just because of some goofs the Conservatives have made, some, uh, you know, basically an inability. Um, let me just get this screen back where I want it to be. Mainly because of an inability to maintain a solid government um, or a stable government. I don't know if the new fellow is going to make out better. He may, but it looks more and more likely that England's going to switch governments. And Mars is aspecting Saturn in this chart. We want everything to be perfect. We want everything to be just right. And sometimes that also means trying to shut up people we don't like, and I think That's happening on both sides of the political fence. You're seeing it in various ways in the United States in terms of uh, prohibiting materials that people have access to, and also to trying to discredit uh, sources and discredit reporters who are essentially just doing their job. And I think that that trend won't disappear anytime soon because of the United States Rahu Mahadasha. And at least from what I can see from this chart, a lot of other countries, the world situation is focused more on trying to stabilize things, more on trying to get um, make the population secure, stable. But there's also a lot of money that's flowed out of countries. You see, this is the 12th Lord in the first house. And that kind of a combination, inevitably, if you have more money flowing out than you have coming in, inevitably you're going to hit a crisis. And Mars is aspecting K2, so be very careful driving just in general. Watch out for warlike activities around the world. And again, I don't think there's going to be a major war. Pluto is in Capricorn right now, but Pluto takes a long time to transit through Capricorn. And I tend not to use Pluto because I think it's a redundant indicator in astrology charts. I know a lot of people disagree with me. They're entitled to, but we have Mars aspect in Capricorn right now. Mars is debilitated. It's weak by sign. So people's fuses will be a lot shorter than normal. Okay. That doesn't mean we're going to have a world war or even a bunch of regional conflicts. Um, a lot of what this particular chart does indicate, though, is we have, um, I'm looking for two lagnas here. Ruta Lagna is in the seventh house, so that will set up a lot of opposition or the appearance of a lot of opposition internationally. And the Usual Lagna, which has to do with relationships with other people, is in the second house. And so a lot of attention is going to be focused more on money. If there's anything that does start a conflict, it'll be because of poor countries um, not being able to trade um, or manage their wealth. There's been a rather nasty situation that's developed, and I've discussed this before with China, although the United States did this many times in the past. Basically, China has been lending money to African states, and when the African states can't pay up, they say, well, we'll take your natural resources. That's fine. You can give us that in exchange. Um, the United States would often take over countries that wanted access to natural resources for, or they didn't want a communist government coming in, let's say. So this is not this isn't something I'm making up. This is history. This actually happened. But I think the one saving factor of this chart is we have Jupiter aspecting the moon, which will make people write more, but it will also bring out higher um, calls to higher authority. And what I mean by that is um, most of these problems we're having will not be couched in terms like, well, it's because I don't like that particular party or I don't like that particular industry. It'll be couched in terms of, well, there's a moral imperative that has to be met. Because Jupiter is with Rahu, to be honest with you, that's a bunch of crap. I want to say something stronger, but it's a bunch of nonsense. But that'll be the argument. Essentially, what we're trying to do is maintain X principle. when really all we're looking to do is punish political enemies. So you're going to see that a lot over the next 11 months, and we've already seen it a lot over the past few years during this Rahu Mahadasha in the United States. And one reason I'm focusing so much on the United States is because right now it is still the number one economic force in the world. There are certainly competitors coming up for it, but they're not close. They're not really close yet to the United States influence. And so what the United States tends to do tends to influence the entire world. That's becoming less and less pronounced, especially during this Jupiter Rahu conjunction. So you'll see other countries trying to pull away and become independent until around the end of the year. There's no guarantee they'll snap back to the United States being the most important country in the world, but I'm thinking at least from when Jupiter enters Taurus, it'll sort of assume that role again. Um, and the other thing is, so this doesn't mean that other countries won't have a chance to do it. It's just not imminent. Okay. Uh, the other thing is, if you look at money, um, there's there are a lot of assets. There's some potential decline in real estate around the world, some potential decline in energy resources. Europe's already experiencing that because of boycotts, but this will also expand to other parts of the world as well. And finally, there'll be conflicts over this Mars aspect in K2, okay? Because it's adversely affecting the economy. The economy, again, what we're looking at right now is fairly low labor participation rates in the United States. That's one of the reasons, although not the only reason the unemployment rate looks so good. But also, we're looking at other countries which have underutilized labor pools, okay, and are having trade problems. So not every country's in that particular boat, but because of certain policy decisions they've made in different countries, like China's zero COVID policy, um, we're only starting to get back a little bit to normal in terms of economic policy. And the thing I'm afraid of is the Fed's insistence on fighting um, every problem just because, as if it's an easy money problem, is going to affect markets around the world towards the end of the year. I hope I'm wrong about that, but this will have sort of a cascading effect throughout the market. Now, again, for every problem, there's an opportunity. For every issue, there's an opportunity. So real estate may decline a little bit over the next couple of months, even though there's a short supply in the United States. Um, housing still remains an issue. Affordable housing remains an issue uh, for most of the world. Um, and for area parts of the world that don't have this as a problem, a lot of people don't want to move to those parts of the world. So I think we're kind of stuck for the next few months, especially with all these planets moving in between Rahu and Ketu. Jupiter's move in between Rahu and Ketu is particularly difficult because it's going to stay that way for the next, oh gosh, maybe around the next 4 years or so. So Jupiter tends to be the big opportunity giving planet, but it'll be good for spiritual growth, no question. It'll be good for some speculative economic growth, but it'll be so like trapped in a cycle I would say for about 4 years in which the economy feels a little bit sluggish. Now there will be isolated cases in which it won't. And let's see now. And again, for a lot of people in the United States who are working and people who are begging for employees, That may seem like that's not much of an issue, but again, we're only looking at the surface right now. And there's a little bit of trouble, but this Purva Falguni moon is very, very good. So that's a positive. Now let's look at the individual signs. Um, Also, just one last cap. A lot of ideological struggles over the next 6 months or so, maybe even longer, because Rahu will be moving uh, in between. He'll be moving into Pisces. So over the next year and a half to 3 years, uh, you'll see a lot of buildup of what I would call ideological or religious resentment. And that's true. That's not even connected with issues like abortion rights in the United States, although it certainly touches on it. But I think one of the things you'll see is a lot of groups amassing and um, trying to um, focus on why their belief system, whether it be an economic system or a religious system, is better for the world than these other systems are. And I think the problem with that is, at least from my perspective, certain systems are better for certain parts of the world than other systems are. And I I think if you're trying to make one system a universal system, um, number one, you need a lot of buy-in across many different cultures, and that's being attempted through what I would call the corporatization process or the globalization process, and that's been in place since the 1990s. This isn't new, um, but also um, it gets dangerous when you start having people say, "Well, if they can't get their way by convincing you or buying you out, they'll just go to war with you," and that's where a lot of neoliberals and neoconservatives end up. So that's what makes the world a little trigger happy right now. It's not really the idea that Islam dislikes Christianity or anything like that. It's essentially people trying to focus or concentrate power in a tiny area. So that's going to be the big conflict over the next few years or so, whether or not globalization or decentralization is a better strategy for the world. And I'm coming down on neither side, to be honest with you. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing in the chart, and it'll be interesting to watch how it unfolds. So let's look at the individual astrological signs. But again, like I said, these great problems bring great opportunities. A lot of opportunity for technological advancement with Saturn in the sign and with Rahu about to merge with Saturn in about, oh gosh, maybe around 3 years or so. Okay, so you'll see kind of a technological explosion. Um, so let's go over here. Let's go to the individual signs. And um, I was going to mention something about AI, but I think I'll leave that for another discussion. So a lot of people are paranoid about AI right now. Um, I think it's like anything, it's like a knife can be used uh, to kill or to heal, right? So uh, AI is like a knife. It can cut both ways. So artificial intelligence is not necessarily an evil. It's not necessarily a good. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. Um, the so let's look at at Aries. Aries has Jupiter and Mercury and Rahu in the first house. That's overall not a bad placement. It will give this sign a lot of moral authority. It'll give them a lot of push. Sun is in the second house. It's just past its exaltation point. It's very good for gathering financial resources. Um, Venus is in the third house, very good at diplomatic skills, although the sign may be a little bit reticent to go after what it wants. Mars is in the fourth house. This sign will have to watch its temper, especially in terms of relationship partners. And Moon is in the fifth house. This is generally good in terms of dealings with children. K2's in the seventh house. Relationship partners will seem a little bit brittle or a little bit difficult to deal with, and also business partners. Saturn's in the 11th. Again, we're talking about a slow growth scenario for this particular sign over the next few months, and particularly true as Mars, when Mars goes into Leo in about another month and a half. So basically, Aries looks okay this month, but again, remember you're going to be a little bit testy. Mars is in the fourth house, so don't get involved in new relationships at this time. That's all I have to say about Aries. For Taurus, Sun is in the first house, so there's a lot of focus on financial booms and benefits. And Venus is in the second house. That's another good financial placement, so the sign will tend to do pretty well financially this month, although there is a tendency to overspend, as we've seen in previous months. This doesn't change very much. The sun and the moon will change, obviously, more quickly than other planets will. And Venus will enter um, Cancer in about another 3 days, and that will make us a little bit more emotionally passionate about what we believe, more willing to fight or disagree. The other thing is we have Moon in the fourth house, so again, some change of residence may be anticipated. Mercury, the Lord of the fifth house, expenditures because of children, and be careful not to waste your good reputation during this transit. And finally, cases in the sixth house, sort of hidden enemies or some delays or obstructions in getting your needs met or overcoming enemies. Saturn's in the 10th, very good for career life. For Gemini, Gemini is in Venus is in Gemini, so there's been this temptation to really be expressive, emotionally loving to a lot of people. And Mars is in the second house, so again, there's some anger expressed through the sign this month. Moon is in the third house. That's good. So there's a strong desire for financial growth and philanthropy. Ketu's in the fifth, so some problems still with children. Saturn's in the ninth, slow but steady financial gains. And finally, Jupiter, Mercury, and Rahu will give short-term financial gains. And Sun, this sign will be employed or used by the government a lot over the next month. They'll have a lot of dealings with the government over the next couple of weeks. For Cancer, Cancer has Mars in the first house. This is kind of a paradoxical placement because Mars in the first house is actually a good placement for Cancer. It rules the 10th house and the 5th house, so it's what's called a special union making planet for Cancer rising. So it's both good and bad at the same time. However, Mars significations tend to be a little bit disrupted by this placement. People with this particular placement seem to be not as sharp as uh, as normal. People with a moon in the second house will be very strongly focused on money and financial growth. For K2, having K2 in the fourth house, some domestic problems. Saturn's in the eighth house, slow gains to relationship partners, and finally Jupiter and Mercury and Sun and Venus in the ninth, 10th, and 11th house is great for career. Uh, I'm sorry, 10th, I'm sorry, in the 10th and 11th house is great for career. But again, watch out for spending money, especially on children and especially on luxuries. For Cancer, for Leo, excuse me, we've already spoken a lot about Leo because that was when this particular chart started. But Leo has a lot of courage, a lot of emotional stability, a large tendency to expend, especially on property this month. There's some anxiety about property because of this placement in the 12th house. Maybe a fear of loss that'll go away within about a month and a half, and it won't go away right away. Venus is in the 11th house, so good for financial gains through efforts. Sun's in the 10th house, very good for, I'm sorry, Sun's in the 10th house, yes, very good for career. And Jupiter and Mercury and Rahu are in the ninth house, so difficult to please investors or bosses, but basically not a bad month for Leo. Mars is really the only detrimental placement in this chart for Leo, to be honest. Business partnerships may run a little bit more slowly than normal just because of Saturn in the seventh house, but it's not all that bad. For Virgo has K2 in the second house, Moon in the 12th house. So there's kind of a movement of loss of finances because of friends. Venus is in the 10th house and Mars is in the 11th house. So Sun, Mercury, Sun, Venus, and Mars in the 9th, 10th, and 11th tend to be good for career. Jupiter's in the 8th house, so there'll be unexpected boons this sign will receive, but they won't last that long, or they'll be a little bit tough to put together. But a lot of research for the sign this month. And basically, Saturn's in the 6th house, so again, just watch out for physical exhaustion or mental exhaustion or for bad habits taking over. For Libra has Venus in the 9th house still. It'll be in the 10th house, so there'll be a shift of focus within the week to career matters for Venus, as well as Mars. So it won't give a lot of money, but it'll give a lot of status and reputation. And Moon's in the 11th house in Leo, so there should be some financial growth for this particular sign over the next week or so. Sun's in the 9th house, so you'll have authority figures. No, Sun's in the 8th house. Excuse me. There'll be unexpected gains from government, and Jupiter's with Mercury and Rahu in the 7th house. Again, be careful about what you hear from relationship partners. They're not really, or not relationship partners, but promises of relationships. They're being overly enthusiastic. Let's put it that way. Saturn's in the 5th house, good for children, good for slow growth, good for slow acquisition of knowledge. Now back to Scorpio. Scorpio has K2 in the 12th house, so expenditure for religious or spiritual purposes. Mars is in the 9th. Moon is in the 10th, so some change of career for this sign. Venus is in the 8th. Some unexpected financial boons for this sign from relationship partners. Jupiter's in the Sun's in the 7th house. A lot of focus on relationships. And Saturn is in the 4th house, so some change of home, aspecting Jupiter, Mercury, and Rahu. So some enemies among either younger people or college or people who are in education or government. For Sagittarius has no planets in it. It has Venus in the 7th house, so you'll attract flirty or attractive people, but they'll be a little bit untrustworthy. Venus is going to go into the 8th house by the end of the week, and Sun's in the 6th, so some problems with the government, some upsets from the government. It can be local or federal. Jupiter, Mercury, and Rahu are in the 5th house. This is not a bad placement. This is actually considered to be a Raj Yoga or a special combination maker for this sign. And so this actually gives unexpected luck from past life efforts or from past efforts made even in this lifetime. And Saturn aspects that conjunction. So again, it makes a good status and good wealth producing combination for this sign. For Capricorn, sorry, I keep doing that. Capricorn has Saturn in the 2nd house, Jupiter in the 3rd house, is in the 4th house, so there'll be some good luck coming from home, but still a sense of dissatisfaction. Sun is in the 5th house, and Venus is in the 6th house, which will indicate a lot of work spent on beauty or beautification. Mars is in the 6th house. I'm sorry, it's in the 7th house. So there'll be some fights or arguments with relationship partners. The same is true with Cancer, by the way. So Cancers will be very sensitive relationship-wise. Moon is in the 8th house. Some relationship partnerships may actually partners may actually be a little bit isolated. Ketu's in the 9th house, very good for financial luck, actually, for this sign. Ketu's still in the 10th, very good for career luck, but again, not good for recognition. My apologies for the mistakes I am making. First, Aquarius. Aquarius overall has a good layout here. Jupiter, Mercury, Rahu, a lot of desire for knowledge, a lot of gain of status. Sun puts this sign in a position of authority, and Venus in the 5th house gives benefits from past lives. Venus will move to the 6th house, so you may have some enemies among females, at least from this chart. 7th house, Moon is in the 7th house, could indicate a change in relationship life or a change in relationship partners, although this is only this moves over the next couple of days, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But definitely a change in business partnerships. Ketu's in the 9th house, kind of unusual, but basically this is good because Venus, the Lord of this sign, is in the 5th house, so this gives a lot of unexpected benefits from past lives or from past actions. Finally, Pisces has Jupiter is Lord and Mercury is 4th house owner in the 2nd house along with Rahu. That gives a lot of ability to produce financial growth. Sun is in the 3rd house, a lot of courage. Venus is in the 4th. A lot of sentimental attachment and a lot of conversation for this sign. A lot of extra learning as well. And I need to get this unblocked. And let's see now. Mars is in the 6th house, or is in the 5th house, so that will give some fights or arguments with children, mainly over what they don't have, which is not unusual. Ketu's in the 8th, a lot of occult studies, a lot of spiritual studies. And finally, Saturn's in the 12th house, so that tends to indicate, again, too much spending. So watch out for spending every sign this month. Now let's pull up the world map. I don't have as much time to focus on this because I rambled a lot at the beginning. So the astral mapping. So we're having some worries close to Hawaii, some worries close to Wake Island down here. There's a Saturn line intersecting a Mercury line, so that this could indicate supplies are being cut out to Hawaii, or it's getting more expensive to live there, which is not a surprise. I've been there. it's much more costly to get goods in Hawaii than it is around the world, and they're probably suffering more from supply chain problems than almost anywhere else. Um, there's a Venus line running through um, uh, Nevada and down into Arizona and affecting California and Portland. So this tends to mean big rainfalls and some transitions. Now there has been some um, reported activity in Yosemite um, National Park. I'm not expecting a huge volcano at this point, but definitely more activity because the Saturn and Venus line affecting each other because Venus does have to do with, to a certain extent, especially next week, it will have to do with eruptions. There's a Mars line hitting through Texas and some more violence, Montana, Oklahoma, all the way down to Texas, into Nicaragua, and into Chile, and I'm sorry, Ecuador, Chile, and Argentina. I didn't have a chance to talk about this. Ecuador is experiencing major problems right now. My apologies to Ecuador. And we have a Rahu Mercury line heading through um, roughly through Ohio, but affecting the East Coast, and a Mars line, a lot of aggressive activity happening, especially in Guatemala. And finally, all the way, like I said, Ecuador is getting hit by a couple of different factors. Unfortunately, Ecuador and Peru. Um, and let's see now. There's a moon line heading through Nova Scotia and down into Brazil, and there's also a sun line. So we can expect some changes of government in regions of Brazil, or even um, some economic problems. I know that the president of Brazil has been chastising the West for what they've been doing in Russia and in other parts of the world. So the West, technically he's West, but essentially the European powers. Um, Venus is running through Ireland and England and Spain, and this Venus is a little bit weak, and also through Morocco and Ghana down here. And I think what you're going to see is very heavy rains in Ireland and even some political violence over the next week or so. And into England, we have Mars over here. So this is kind of a violent belt over here between Spain, Portugal, and Portugal's in trouble. I know that as well, and Norway. And this belt expands all the way into Germany, and we have a Rahu line intersecting it in Algeria, which is not good. So from Gabon to Nigeria, basically, and all the way up through Finland and Eastern Europe. So some potential for earthquakes in that part of the country, or that part of the world, excuse me. And we have a Mercury line running through uh, Eastern Europe as well. So again, some possibilities of misinformation, but also, and I don't use misinformation in the sense of propaganda or even uh, bad reporting on COVID. It's just going to be a lot of propaganda they'll be seeing. And there's a moon line close to the Ukraine border, but also close to Turkey's border with Syria, and also to Saudi Arabia and down all the way. And it's conjoined with a Saturn line as well, or it's influenced by a Saturn line. So that part of the world will have more hardship. Unfortunately, it'll be famous. It'll be in the news. But There'll be a distinct change. The Syrians will suffer, I think, more than the Turks on this particular issue. And let me enlarge this just a little bit. It's a little bit late, but it didn't work. It did work a little bit. And over India, nothing's really happening over India, which is a welcome change, but Iran is having uh, some poor luck. Iran has been actually been working uh, against Ukraine. I don't know if you knew that from the news, but they've actually been uh, assisting the Russians in Ukraine. Um, and Jupiter and over here in Bangladesh near Laos and close to Cambodia and Vietnam. We have Venus lines and Jupiter lines and Rahu lines. So these countries are going to be kind of in difficult straits financially. It'll affect Eastern India a lot and also Russia. And finally, Mars is passing through China, so we can expect to see some violence in China. There's a sun line going through the Philippines and and close to North Korea, and that should indicate some potential um, for dictatorial measures. This is going up through China, and finally, there's a moon line and a sun line uh, running through Indonesia and all the way up into Japan. So there'll be some kind of change or interruption in the government, maybe even a political um, replacement. Finally, Jupiter's and Venus are affecting New Zealand. The only thing that'll do for New Zealand is will bring heavy rains. So that's it for the world. Um, I have said repeatedly in previous broadcasts that South America is in kind of um, a crisis mode, or large parts of South America are sort of in a crisis mode, and that's been true in the recent broadcasts I've seen. So I wish them the best of luck. I pray for you all. I love you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And there are some good things coming over the next few months. And don't be afraid and make the best of all these situations that come your way. You have the ability to do it. A lot of the good things that are coming out of this is it's encouraging you to be responsible for yourself. And I don't mean that in a way of like, oh, pulling up by bootstraps. Essentially, identify opportunities for yourself, take advantage of opportunities for yourself. If something fails, don't give up. Okay. Those are the things that I'm emphasizing. Okay. So, best of luck to you. I love you all. Thank you. Namaste. And see you next week. Bye, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe.